Hi everyone, and welcome to the first of my predictions videos. Here we're going to be talking about the vampire counts. Now there will be a timestamp in the description if you want to skip straight to the predictions, but first of all what I'm going to do is give everyone that's new to Warhammer just a brief description of who the vampire counts are, where they came from, that sort of stuff. I'm also going to be talking a bit slower and the music should be a bit lower as well. Just so, because that's what people asked for in the first video. Now, the vampire counts. I'll try and give you the fast version because the history is very, very fast. Their origins actually lie in a different faction from the Warhammer world. That faction is the Tomb Kings. Back a very long time in Warhammer's history, long before the Empire was even thought of, the Tomb Kings were actually an empire of humans called Nhikara. And Nagash was a priest in this empire. Now Nagash had some dark elf prisoners, some slaves, and he learned from them some magic. And this new magic he learned he called necromancy. He studied this new magic he had discovered, he studied it and he researched it because he really badly wanted to become immortal. And eventually he did. The first vampires were made by people following in his footsteps. They were trying to become immortal themselves, but they weren't able to perfect it like Nagash. They succeeded, but they also failed. They were immortal, but they were flawed, i.e. they were vampires. Now, let me show you the starting location for the vampire counts. First of all, this is a map of the Empire, one of the factions that are going to be in the game at release. Now, I've shown you where the vampire counts come from. And let's get a zoomed in look of that now. This map has also been zoomed in and turned to the right. I think, I've got it here in my notes. Yep, I'm a bit down low there. Yeah, the map's been turned to the right. So here we go, I'll show you where the compass is, so the north, and so it's not actually, when we play it in the game, it'll be turned so that north will be up. But this is the starting location for the vampire counts. And this is the land owned by the von Karstein family, which, hopefully, you should recognise that game if you've been keeping up to date on Warhammer Total War. The leader of the von Karstein family is the leader for this faction. Now, there we go, now that we know a bit more about them, let's talk about playstyle. The playstyle of the vampire counts in the Warhammer world, and how I predict it'll be in this Warhammer Total War, is a pretty nifty one, I do feel. Vampire counts love to swarm their enemies in dead minions of zombies, skeletons and that sort of thing. They bring a very large number of troops to a battle, and the even more exciting thing is they raise more during the battle to fight for them, and they can also bring their dead troops back to life. Their troops also are completely fearless, their morale will be unbreakable, they'll never run. But when the unit is losing in combat, they will start to turn to dust. So they will die pretty fast, but you should also be able to resurrect them pretty fast as long as your magic goes well. Most of the vampire count's troops are very poor. Like, if a zombie got in a slap fight with a baby, I'd give it to the baby. That is how weak their basic troops are. The zombie is the weakest of them all. Skeletons are subpar. Like, think of them as like the levy troops, probably the skeletons would be, but you're going to have a lot of them. And obviously you get your more advanced troops as well, but you're still going to be playing a numbers game with the vampire counts. And also with the large numbers, you want to keep them there, you're going to be summoning more and you need to keep that numerical superiority. If you start letting your army crumble and turn to dust and you're not replacing them, that's when the vampire counts are really going to suffer and lose. Vampire counts also get access to a lot of horrifying creatures to bolster their ranks, and to have that fist to slam into the enemy where their basic troops might not. Some of these creatures are, an example of them anyway, is the zombie dragon. Yep, that is as cool as it sounds, a dragon zombie. And they have lots of other creatures of the night to do their bidding. The vampires themselves are very strong heroes. They are very strong at fighting and killing enemy troops, and they can also be really strong at magic as well, which is unheard of in the Warhammer world. They're the only faction that do this really well, that their heroes can be both really strong close combat and really strong as mages. So that is their heroes are very, very important to them. Your heroes are the easiest way to stop your army crumbling. They're the people that cast magic to resurrect and bring yourself new soldiers. So heroes are very, very important to a vampire count army. Your general will be so much more important to you than the general will be to another faction. You need to keep them straight. You need to keep them safe. So even though a vampire is very, very strong, you also need to keep them safe. Other heroes in the vampire count's arsenal will include necromancers, which are pure mages, and white kings, which are pure fighting. Now, another thing I thought of is, well, you're undead. You don't need food. Food is a very, very, very large part of the total Warhammer game now. You've got to keep everyone fed, and it is one of the hardest things to do if you're not paying attention to it and you let it get ahead of you. So if vampire counts don't need food, that would give them a huge bonus over the other factions. So I've been thinking about this, but they don't need food, but they do need magic to maintain their armies and to maintain everything really. So I suspect instead of having a farm, like food farm, you might get some sort of magic farm in instead that will take them back up to that sort of level. Now, what else do we know about the vampire counts? They are very strong in the magic phase in the Warhammer game, and it's this phase that they need the most. A vampire count will win or lose his game by his magic. If his opponent is able to stop him casting the spells to resurrect and summon more undead minions, his army will look pretty weak, because he needs that to maintain his numbers, because when a unit is losing, they start to crumble to dust. Hence, he needs to keep his numbers up, he needs to grind. A vampire count wants a war of attrition, and you've got to take that away from them. That is how you beat them. You take away that war of attrition. So blitzkrieg sort of tactics, or destroying them fast, cutting the heads off the Hydra. You need something like that. You cannot fight them in a war of attrition, because that's the war they love. So that is how I'd expect the battles for vampire counts to go. So I hope I've given you a lot of information. I hope you have enjoyed this. I'm hoping to make some more videos for the other 4 main factions and other predictions. So I hope you stay tuned for them. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope you enjoy them. Tatty bar.